It is the Anfield Wrap in association with The Athletic. Do sign up if you haven't already. If you go to theathletic.co.uk/the Anfield Wrap, you can see loads of fantastic writing on there. Jack Pittbrook's written something really good, theoretically about Tottenham, but actually about Liverpool and how well we attack. We're going to be talking about that, obviously, in the context of Tottenham versus Liverpool. In front of me, I have got John Gibbons, Rob Gutmann, and Gareth Roberts. Gareth and Rob will be coming with us to Ireland. We announced dates last week. It's on all the Anfield Wraps, little bits and pieces. We are doing Friday night in Belfast, Saturday night in Dublin, and then Sunday night in Cork. Before we get stuck into Tottenham versus Liverpool, Gareth, how excited are you about Cork?
Very excited. It's the home of Barry's tea, so you know what I mean.
Have you been on to them?
I'm open. I've been on to them already, mate. Don't worry about that. I'm open to pop in, do a tasting session, have a tour of the factory, meet Barry himself. I mean, none of those things might happen because it's a Sunday, but you know what I mean. I live in hope. And if you're listening, Barry, come on, lad.
We might have a bit of time on the Monday, you know. I was talked into this, you know. I was normally like, we'll get up at 6 a.m. so we can all be in the office at 9 because I'm a psychopath. John said, why don't you have a nice day? So we might have a bit of time on the Monday, so let's not throw that away. All right, then Tottenham versus Liverpool is Rob Gutmann. It's a game of two bits. It's not two halves.
Big bit and a smaller bit.
Yeah, big bit. Liverpool should be probably 3-1 up by the end of it. Smaller bit when Tottenham should probably equalise. It's a tremendous miss in real time. It's a tremendous miss. It's actually, I had a look on StatsBomb, and it's doesn't even quite get to 0.5 xg.
I was going to say this.
It's 0.46, and I think that sort of does remind you that 1 in 2 of them don't score, if you know what I mean, like on average. But in real time, for all the world it looked in, but Liverpool should have been out of sight.
Yeah, I could do a good hour on those chances that have been in football history that aren't quite as good as you see. Even like the Ida Johnson one against us in the semi-final, the one where Alisson saves against the Napoli guy Milik, that famous thing. They're excellent chances, but as that showed, it's because of the pace on the ball. I mean, there was one against us this season. I think Chef U, Fleck whips one in very late on. But I think it's because the action happens so quickly and so close to your goal, and it's when things are at stake that you go, oh shit. Actually, Aguero has one in that game, but we're 3-0 in the City game earlier this season against us, but we're 3-0 up at the time, so you don't quite count it the same way. But it is a strange thing. The fragility of a team as good as ours find themselves in, despite. And the problem is because, and I think you wrote about it in your post-match piece, teams are very happy to go, we take 1-0 down on 75 against a team like Liverpool. They go, that isn't bad. We're in a football match with 15 to go. And if that's the stall they set themselves, if they mentally get themselves right, what they can play into is the fact that if Liverpool score early, as they do, they then do want to get the second and they can retain the initiative. But as time goes by, it enters players' minds that 1-0 might well do, and these aren't laying a glove on us really. And I therefore think your intensity as an attacking force drops off, and it therefore, whatever you want, inevitably this moment will come.
Gareth, what Rob says there, I think the first thing to say is that if you're dealing with a side who've got as many good players as Tottenham, whether or not how good a side they are at the minute, it's almost a separate question because of this. That 1-0 on 75 at home, 1-0 down, it isn't the end of the world. You do still feel like you're in the game. And if you're happy with a point, and whether or not Tottenham should be happy with a point is a separate question. But if you are happy with a point, 1-0 down on 75 isn't that bad. And you've got all this quality, plus you've just made 2 good subs.
Yeah, and there was a sort of a notable... It was almost like crowd, players and manager all thought, well, we're only 1-0 down, so why not have a little go here? And they did have a go, and they did create that chance, and it was a little bit nervy. There were other moments as well, weren't there? I thought, like, I imagine today at Melwood, or I like to think that, Van Dijk is still fuming about having to actually get his shorts dirty and put a tackle in, because, he doesn't often go to ground, does he? But he went to ground, and even that moment was weird. Like, he went to ground, won a great tackle, and there was just this moment where everyone seemed to just look at it. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, what about the second ball, lads? Any chance?
So it's almost like they're all going to each other. Virgil's going to be livid.
Yes, he's got a tackle in there. I think it was a weird match in a way where I almost think you could say lots of different things about it and they'd all be right. So it was brilliant that they won. It's brilliant that they got the record. It's brilliant that he kept on going. It's brilliant how much piss they're boiling by continually winning and finding ways to win. And obviously, there was loads of aspects to the performance. You obviously had Robertson you know, being a little bit naughty there at times, and the big debate about his tackle, which is absolutely fine. He wins the ball, so I don't really know what that debate is. But, you know, it's just, I thought it was slightly off in aspects. I thought, you know, like sometimes it was the wrong touch, it was the wrong decisions. There was flicks and tricks in the wrong places at times and things like that.
Almost like it was too easy for them, I thought, the flicks and tricks.
Yeah, it was a bit like, you know, you want confidence from them, and they're going to be confident because they've won so many games and they've been, you know, so near to perfect. But equally, I thought the sort of the border between confidence and arrogance was slightly, they fell the wrong side a couple of times maybe. But equally though, I found it interesting about Spurs, and I've been thinking about it all weekend really, about, you know, they do get some chances, they do get some moments, they're in our half, they've got good players like you said, and I was sort of thinking, well, why couldn't they get that draw? It wasn't just down to Liverpool, I thought, it was down a little bit to them, and I thought, you know, when they're constantly being drip fed this idea, and it's the right idea by the way, that Liverpool are as good as they are, then does that seep into opposition minds mentally? And I think maybe it does. And I think maybe that when they do get these chances, which are rare, because Liverpool are great defensively, the goalkeeper's brilliant as well, and was on the weekend, I thought, you know, did he snatch at them because of that? Because they're so rare. You know, you look at Firmino and the way he took his goal, unbelievable. Like to let it run across his body like he does and finish with his weaker foot into the corner, superb finish. You look at them and the snatching at the chances, the blazing things over the bar, trying to hit it as hard as they possibly can. And I think that's because they're thinking, if you get a chance against Liverpool, you've got to take it.
If you get a chance against Liverpool, you've got to take it. But also, John, the goalkeeper's interesting here. I mean, the extent to which I began to wonder, is he in people's heads? Because he's so good. Everyone knows he's so good. These are all professional footballers. They're watching him week in, week out, and they're going, God, he's good. And then they get opportunities, and I just sort of wonder, and Tottenham, even with the final as well, that they obviously played against us, if they were just thinking to themselves, if we get anything against this fella, we've got to put it in the absolute corner. I think Son's one that he blazes over the bar is a good example of someone trying to beat the goalkeeper rather than trying to score the goal, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, maybe. He's got a good real aura about him at the moment, hasn't he? And I think, like, you know, it's even sort of the fact that his hair's growing out of his beard. He sort of looks like he's ready for war almost. Now, don't he? I don't know whether he said he's not going to cut anything until they get beat or anything, but, like, you know, he looks, you know, he looks brilliant on the pitch in terms of what he's doing for the Reds. You know, I think he's obviously sweeping up. He's talent on the floor, but I did see someone before that says he's got the highest shot percentage save in the whole league, and that struck me because normally that's, you know, it's the keepers down the bottom. You've got them, haven't they, because they're getting peppered with shots, and, you know, but for him, you know, he's not just, you know, the best sweeper. He's not just, you know, perfect for how we play. Well, he's saving more shots than everyone else as well. And I think a bit of credit has to go to the defence, because I don't think we're giving away loads of clear chances, although there was obviously one right at the end. But I think, you know, what is coming through to him, you know, he's stopping. And you talk about, you know, both you and Robbo there have talked about getting into, you know, players' heads and what opposition players are thinking when they come up against us. But it must be this thing where, you know, you've got this intense press from the forwards and from the midfield, and then the midfield seem to be, you know, running like 2 or 3 men each. You know, so I think Wijnaldum, was it 12 or 13 ball recoveries in the game, which is just unreal. So you got, if you get through all that, then you got Virgin and his mates. You know what I mean? And it would just, you know, unreal. 6 clean sheets in a row now, I think it is, in the Premier League. And then if you get all past that, you've got Alisson, and it must be like no wonder they didn't receive, you know, it took them a while to, you know, to build themselves up to even bother.
I think there is a lot about that being in the head thing, and what John's saying and Gareth's saying is it's a reputation of the team, that a team that presses you. Therefore, they will be told in the run up to the game, you are going to have no time on the ball. So don't think time is going to stand still for you. You can have a little look up, a think. So they'll be keen. So, and Alisson there's got to be no keeper that closes you down quicker, as does the rest of the team. That, I think, it plays into the likes of Son's head. He thinks, if I'm going to get a chance against this keeper and against this defence, I've got to take it early. And he does take it early. But actually, I don't know if I'm right on this, but when I've watched it back a couple of times, Trent, I don't know if he doesn't foul Son, but he makes a challenge right at the death there, which I think hugely puts him off. Without that, I think Son gets a much clearer shot away. But was there any others apart from those two? What I think they do that's really interesting, I'll go back to John on this and then bring Gareth in. When you say credit to the defence,
one of the things I think that they do, and I think they've learned this, I think the manager's seen it. We used to say a couple of seasons ago when Burnley got to 7th, one of the things you'd say is that Burnley would let you have shots but on their terms, where they'd have two big lads blocking off the corners and you drill a shot in and it'd be, oh, the keeper saved it again, and the keeper ends up having really good numbers. Now, trust me, our keeper's the best keeper in the world, but I do think there is something, John, where the number of times where you look when the opposition are striking the ball, there's often pressure from the back, and then there's our defenders position themselves really, really well to say, well, the corners are out of bounds unless it's unreal, at which point then you're going to go more or less into the keeper's gloves, and then his handling's so good that you don't even get anything back off him there. And
his position as well, his position is excellent, and I think that's a big thing. There's the amount of times where, you know, they do manage to get a shot away and Alisson just seems to be in the right place just to make what would be a tricky save, you know, a relatively easy one for him, and I don't think that's a coincidence. You know, you've seen it so many times now. I don't think, you know, it's luck, or I don't think it's bad shooting even necessarily. I think he's just anticipates so well where it's able to go, and as you say, the defenders, what they're doing in terms of the blocking, and also I think that they're quite clever in terms of knowing what balls to challenge for and knowing what ones to not leave, but maybe. So if you've got if a cross goes in, and it's going towards a striker, you've got to choose. Do you jump with him and try and win it, or do you basically do nothing and look for second balls, or do you try and put him off a little bit and just maybe give him a little nudge and stuff like that? And I think they're excellent at that as well. I think they recognise certain ones who think, well, I'm not going to get there to that, so I can jump up, but he's going to win the header, or I can give him a little nudge here, a little put, whatever it is, gamesmanship, whatever you want to call it. I think they've got really good at that as well, and as Rob said before, make chances less easy, make chances that, you know, they look easier than they are actually because of what we're doing.
There's something, Gareth, where you feel at the minute like the side's just on this plane of, as John says there, almost like mentally in a defensive phase more, as much as anything else, just mentally so smart. I think it stems a lot of it from the goalkeeper and from Van Dijk, but just positioning yourself well, as I say, to make the shot more difficult. Knowing when to give the attacker a decision to make rather than making it for him by basically putting yourself in a certain position. The number of times Van Dijk will do something a bit unorthodox and let them have the ball as if to say, well, I'm backing my mates, but also I'm backing that you can't do the really good thing you need to do to either beat me or score from here. I think they've just got themselves into this situation where they know that they're almost certainly going to make the right decision, and if they don't make the right decision, well, they're going to recover from it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and that I think as well they don't make a catastrophe out of situations, which I think past Liverpool defences and certainly goalkeepers did do. So what I mean by that is, you know, when you feel that sort of body building up of pressure, like, you know, and it was there was a time, even if it was only a short space, where the stadium's up, you could see Mourinho encouraging them more, you know, they got forward more, they had more attacking intent, but you sort of trusted Liverpool to get the other side of it, because I think you've seen in the past that when you reach that situation, defenders do panic, goalies do panic, they do things that are out the ordinary, whereas this Liverpool side definitely trust itself, trust the goalkeeper. Van Dijk mentioned when we did the interview with him in Qatar that, you know, it's massive for him that Alisson's behind him, and that's Van Dijk saying that. So, you know, I think you can see that, and, you know, Spurs do have that little spell, like I say, but you trusted Liverpool to come the other side of it, and it wasn't like they start booming Everton Rose or whatever. You know, they stick to the principles, they stick to the way they play, they know that they'll get the other side of it, and that's massive. And I just think, you know, in general about this Liverpool side, we've said it before, obviously, but the way they always find a way to win, the way there's always someone who emerges, you know, I think that's special, because, you know, there's been past Liverpool sides where we've been too reliant on maybe one or two talents. And this one, you know, across the board, like if you broke it down individually, you're probably still saying a lot of the time that Man City have actually got better players. But as a team, as a collective, you know, the will that they've got across the board is second to none, and that's why we are where we are. And, you know, I think it's dead funny now, sort of where we are, because, you know, sat down yesterday, watched City, and I got bored at 5-0 and turned it off. Like, but I just wasn't bothered. I just thought, yeah, they're great, but, you know, they've already, for me, pretty much cocked it up. That's why they're 20-1 with the bookies to win the league, because yes, they're playing great football and they're blowing Aston Villa away, but so what? Because they're not us, and they're not as good as us.
When Gareth says there about people stepping up, Rob, Roberto Firmino, all of a sudden you are able to say loves a big goal. There's been a little spate of them. None of them at Anfield. I still think there's times where, for instance, he gets a good opportunity early in the game where he's not quite as all singing, all dancing, but I think he is working ever so hard, coming deep a hell of a lot and becoming an extra man in midfield if we're ever outnumbered there, doing a little bit more of that. But suddenly there's almost a Dirk Kuyt-esque run of massive goals, the sort of run of massive goals, a Luis Garcia run of massive goals that you're able to look at and go, big goals on the road, big goals to open a game up. Leicester, for instance, we win 4-0, but he gets the opener. Big goals of real significance, and Saturdays is a great example, and it's a lovely finish.
Yeah, it's one of the top ones in his collection now, and there's some very, very good ones there. I suppose he was doing it earlier in the season quietly. Is it the winner at Palace? I mean, he sort of gets an opener against Villa that gets ruled out. Yeah, there's no doubt that after you wonder, he's had a strange season in a certain sense, in that he opens it sensationally. I think he scores 3 or 4 in the first 6, something like that. Scores at Burnley, doesn't he? Scores at Southampton. He's getting his goal, and by the time on the Newcastle game, I don't think he scores that day, but he's getting so much acclaim. Everyone's going, actually, he might be the best player in this side. He was doing breathtaking things that day, a couple of assists. But almost after that, whether he started believing his own press or not, I don't know. I'm not saying his work rate dropped off. I couldn't tell you on that one. But his goal scoring dropped off hugely, and he had this massive drought. Now Klopp says he had a chat with Firmino, and he said to Firmino, "I'm not bothered, mate. I don't need your goals. I just need you and all your bits," which probably is right. But Firmino went, yeah. But he said he could see it was hurting Firmino not having the numbers to go with it, the direct numbers the goals represent. And it seems
got 7, hasn't he, in the league? I think.
Yeah.
Which is low for him when you compare, to the past couple of seasons.
It is, and also he doesn't seem to have suffered droughts, does he? Before, which is the first time he has. Although there's no denying that he has also had spells where he gets into hot streaks of form, but this is the right time for him to be coming into it. And you're right, he definitely is something of a big game player as well. But it feels like saying that sort of damns him in the less big games, because I don't think he ever really drops off his level of performance.
I'm wondering if he's a tiny little bit of a victim of the way in which we're approaching some games in Anfield, John, or whether or not it's just an oddity. I don't know, because it is striking that to have got none of these goals at Anfield and then to pop up like that in this game against Tottenham. I don't know. To me, it's just all a little. And then at Anfield, when people see you a little bit more and focus on you a little bit more, there's maybe a tiny little bit more onus to all be more involved in the final third. And so, therefore, when he's not coming through there, is why there's a couple of people occasionally a little bit not quite sure at the moment. I don't know. He is a very enigmatic footballer, and fair play to him.
Yeah, I don't think there's any particular reason why the goals haven't happened at Anfield. I think it's maybe just one of those coincidence things where it just so happens, we scored more away from home recently. I don't think there's anything particular about how we set up that's any different, because you saw, Tottenham let us have 68% of possession, so we're playing like the home team, wherever we go now. That's how it's working. I think it is obviously still in his head a little bit. It was interesting that Jurgen Klopp was talking in the press conference after the game, and he said that he went up to Firmino to congratulate him, and Firmino was like, first thing he said was, "Oh, sorry, boss, I know I should have scored more than one." And Jürgen was like, "That wasn't what I was going to say to you." Like, it was going to be like, well in. Do you know what I mean? And so it's something that kind of he's conscious of. I think it's just hard because it's a front three, and it's becoming very much a front three now, and the very narrow. And you saw in Salah's first season that Mané had to sacrifice himself a little bit, didn't he? So Mané had come in and done brilliant for us and been the sort of main man, and then when Salah comes and there's the realisation amongst everyone that he's not just this wide player who's going to add a few, but he's this potentially world class talent who he's going on this hot streak. And so it was all kind of built around him, really, and Mané had to play a little bit deeper, well, quite a bit deeper actually, and his numbers suffered. And then obviously Mané has now kicked on and is playing, I think, much more further forward. And so I think there'll always be a little bit of a knock-on effect. I don't think we'll ever have a season, as long as the three of them are here, where they're all sort of there on a similar number going into the last few games. I think it's just sort of the way it goes, really. But I understand why it's getting him down, because he's a striker at the end of the day, and that's what they go on thinking about. They might come out after the game and say, "Oh, it doesn't matter if I scored, it's all about the team." But they've got their own personal pride, and that's how they feel they're contributing to wins as well. All the other stuff that Firmino does is great and brilliant, and it's fantastic he does it. But within himself, he'll feel like, well, that's how I'm a number 9. I'm paid to put the ball in the back of the net, and so But if it's pushing him forward, then it's no sort of bad thing, really. You know, I want Roberto Firmino to be happy because that makes me happy when he's laughing and smiling on Instagram and all that. But you know, if it's something that's pushing him forward and it's something that, you know, he's going to maybe get more out of himself without missing out on all the other stuff, then yeah, that's fine as well, because it only means good news for Liverpool.
It seemed to me, and maybe it's because of the goal, and you end up sort of taking it a little bit too far, but the one thing that seemed to me about Saturday evening when Liverpool were playing well, Gareth, was that it seemed like Salah and Firmino were closer together again, maybe closer together than they've been for a while. I think if you go all the way to, you know, you remember Salah's brilliant season where he gets the 44 goals and it's just incredible. It always felt like him and Firmino were near one another on the pitch, and maybe it is just as simple as, well, you remember the assists, so therefore that's what you're thinking. But all the way through the game, even before that, I did feel as though they were able to dovetail a little bit more, as those sides were worried. You know, Tottenham's selection suggests they're more worried about Mané, plays two right backs, so you know it then opened up the idea that maybe those two were able just to get more time with one another and more creativity between them.
And that's what we were sort of saying before, isn't it, about that, you know, whatever you do to try and stop Liverpool, you sort of leave something else. So it's like the Rafa blanket thing. So it's like, well, where are you throwing it today? So if you're throwing it over Sadio Mane today, okay, well, you're leaving something the other side then. And I thought Salah, actually, you know, you saw a lot from him, I thought, at the weekend, in terms of his touch, in terms of him just looking more on it. And you just thought, well, hang on, there's brighter days ahead here from him now, I think. And, you know, he puts that chance wide, doesn't he, which he beat himself up a little bit about. But I think sort of in the run of games ahead, hopefully starting with Man United, like a hat-trick there, will do Mo. But, you know, he just looked like he was enjoying himself again. He looked like he wasn't sort of overthinking it. And as you say, linking with Firmino as well. And, you know, if that's going to be the case from here on, and that's the thing. No, that's what excites me about the Liverpool side. That, you know, different people come to the fore at different times, and, you know, Bobby's got this little run of form now in front of goal, and fair play to him. And like I said before, I thought the goal was fantastic, by the way. But you know, whoever it is, you know, even when we had a bit of a run from scoring goals from set pieces, you know, Liverpool just keep finding a way. And what I think's significant, and I keep using the word myself, but I've also noticed it creeping into a lot of match reports and things like that. Everyone keeps using the word prevail. Liverpool prevail again, Liverpool prevailed, and that's what Liverpool do. And I always remember, you remember better than me because your memory's well better than mine, but what's the soonest prevailed one? That's a thing, isn't it? Soonest prevailed. And
I think it's maybe might be when he gets the hat-trick.
Yeah. And that's what Liverpool are like. It's that kind of spirit, like what Souness have, where it's just like they're all winners now. They all know. And there's a few great quotes I thought from Robertson, where he's just getting asked about sort of, you know, what it's like and how you keep on going and stuff like that. And they end up, I don't know how the interview went and how they got to this, but they ended up talking about, you know, drinking and sort of looking after yourselves. And he was like, no one, he was basically, him and Henderson saying, no one drinks, really. You can't drink, you know, because it's so intense what we're doing. And they were both sort of saying, football's the most important thing. Like we sometimes say, no, it isn't. But to them right now, I think they know, they recognise the opportunity. They know that the league's there for the taking, that they can be heroes, that they can go down in history. And they just want it. They want it so much. You can see it. It's writ large against so much that they do. You know, everyone, and I think you've got it on the agenda here to talk about it, and rightly so. You know, you just look at Wijnaldum towards the end of the game, and he's just tremendous, isn't he? He's just everywhere. He's sticking his arse out. He's keeping hold of that ball. He's skinning people. He's just running around, running the clock down. He's fantastic. And this was a fella that, you know, not very long ago when we bought him, people were saying he was like, you know, a bit of a tin man off the Wizard of Oz. He didn't really have a heart. Do you know what I mean? Good at football, but not a fella who digs shit out the trenches. Well, he fucking does now.
It's Wijnaldum, John. You were in the grounds, and it looked to me like very much this was one of those where you're in the ground and you can really see everything Gini Wijnaldum's doing. There's the occasional game where you are a bit like, oh, Gini's playing, and they do happen, but then in a game like this one, Gini is most definitely playing. I'd say he ran the show for the first 70, and then for the last 20, he was, along with Lallana, unbelievably important in terms of digging Liverpool out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I said before, I think it's 12 ball recoveries from him during the game. I think the next highest was 9, so he's 3 ahead of anyone else who's on the pitch, and you could see that. You could see he was winning it for us. I thought Chamberlain was a little bit quiet, struggling to sort of get into it really, but Gini was certainly there, was certainly present, and was running it. I thought his passing was good and purposeful. I thought, especially his final third passing, something again that sometimes people say, has he got that aspect of the game? I thought it was excellent. And as you say, last 5 or whatever it was, it was that determination just to do loads of sensible things. And I agree with Gareth, the way it maybe wasn't quite enough of that kind of throughout the game when we were on top of just do a couple of sensible things. But I thought Gini, in terms of how he was keeping the ball, how strong he is, he's even, got the confidence to throw a nutmeg in on Lamella on 90, hasn't he? Just to go, oh yeah, I'll just do this now as well. You think I'm gonna run to the sideline, but here we are, and he just looks so confident at the moment, and that's great to see. I think, his career could have gone different ways, but he gets that move to Liverpool, and he's been a fantastic player for us, and I'm really pleased that he's getting a lot more kind of plaudits and a lot more people saying nice things about him. Obviously, he sneaks into that Ballon d'Or top 30, which is sort of great for him, isn't it? Because a lot of people who maybe don't appreciate him, but certainly not his teammates, and I think he did more than anyone to get us out of I was going to say White Hart Lane there, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, more than anyone to get us out of there with 3 points. I thought he was excellent, but no more so in that last 5.
Sounds like something off Pro Evo or
something. Should give it a proper name soon, Rob. Other players talking about the Ballon d'Or top 30 next year is going to have Adam Lallana in it. It is one hell of a half an hour from him. He comes on and is the very essence of all action. When Gareth talks about the idea that I think that they know they're doing something, they're on the verge of something. They won last year's Champions League. They know that there's, I think they are now. I think getting 97 points, finishing second to City. I think seeing what one league title would mean to everyone, all of it, what one league title would mean for them, the way in which the esteem they're held in across the course of a Liverpool career. When I see Lallana come on there, he plays like a man who knows this is everything. Everything's on the line here, and it would be the easiest thing in the world to not be like that if you were Adam Lallana at this stage. But he's the absolute opposite. He lived every minute whilst he was on the pitch, grabbed every minute.
Yeah, I think if Liverpool do win this title, there'll be all sorts of little moments. It'll mean different things to different individuals with all of us. There's people I will seek out who last remembered Liverpool winning a title and things like that. I think Adam Lallana and Jordan Henderson will find each other across a room and go, we've been here a long time. We've seen it when it was a little bit shit, well, properly worryingly shit at times. And we've both had problems with injury. We've both been written off. It's to different degrees, obviously. But yeah, it's quite a renaissance story, Adam Lallana's, and I don't think it's finished yet. Actually, I wouldn't be. There's still a place up for grabs for next week against Man United. We know Wijnaldum and Henderson should start. I was slightly surprised Oxlade-Chamberlain got the nod ahead of Adam in this game to start it, and I think he could start. They could reverse it. I can't say I know exactly how well Adam Lallana played in that last 30 because I'd had a tough day and I began to mentally sub myself. I've been at a wedding, I was watching it. I just remember
you needed someone to sub in for you.
Yeah, I definitely did. I did I stayed eyes on the pitch, but only just. Watch the highlights back, but you don't see just people running around on the highlights. Been a long day. Thank you to my mate John Riley for his wedding hospitality. But yeah, I snuck off and watched it in a pub with another mate of mine who's equally disgraceful. And the Reds won. And apparently Adam Lallana did really well.
He did, didn't he, Gareth?
Yeah, I talked around the subject for a good 2 minutes there. I can't lie anymore.
It was like a Radio 4 panel quiz. He did do really, really well, Gareth. I mean, it's really interesting, the bits of his game that are just at the minute coming to the fore, because it is, the footballer who was signed as an attacking midfielder. There he comes on, and James Milner himself couldn't have been more James Milner. To the point that, if we'd have got a penalty, I probably would have said, can Lallana take it? It was battling around the pitch, being in the right place, being on the cover, anticipating mistakes, which I think shows someone who's got a really good defensive mindset. He was planning for the worst and was in the position to be able to do something about it.
It's just an experienced head, isn't it? And that's invaluable at this stage of the season and in what we're trying to do, which is be the very best. I know that some people are getting annoyed now because I've seen them say it about how often some of us reference Manchester United of old, because Manchester United of current are shit. But you know, they had so many players that they could just come on and would just sort of do bits for you, just sort it out, make sure you win the game. And not all of them were great players by any stretch, you know, like Fletcher's and John O'Shea's and people like that. Just solid players who can come on and know what it takes to win a game. And I think, you know, maybe that's doing Adam Lallana a bit of a disservice who have just compared them to. But I'm actually trying to be positive and say he's a fella that at that stage of the game you're like, yeah, that's sound. I'm happy with him coming on, particularly the way he's been playing lately. He's not always been on it, obviously, in recent years. I still always think back to that mad moment he had in the Resies when he was like strangling some lad. And you just think, you know, obviously mentally at that time he wasn't in a good place, and he obviously wasn't happy about his career. He was frustrated and all the rest of it. Right now he seems sort of happy with his lot. I'm sure he could have gone somewhere by now. Even in this window, maybe, you know, he could be putting the feelers out, but he seems happy with his lot as being an experienced head who's round and about, who's part of the squad, and who's likely to win a league title. And as you say, you know, you hark back to sort of...
And so played his part in it, and that's the thing.
And play a part in it, exactly. And, you know, obviously, like, the last title is a long, long time ago. But, you know, infamously, famously, whatever, you know, Ronnie Rosenthal plays a big part in that, and he'll always have that. You know, no matter what people want to say about Ronnie Rosenthal, pricks will still go on about him, miss at Aston Villa. I still go on about a hat-trick at Charlton, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's... that's what you need to win a league title, isn't it? You know, yes, there's a core, yes, there's the stars, yes, there's the players that come to the fore when you think about this side, but you need those peripheral players. Like, you might still have moments where Shaqiri wins us a game, or Origi wins us a game, or, you know, who knows, Harvey Elliott wins us a game, and all of those people will play a part. Like, once I've actually changed how I think about it, because I used to think, must be weird if you're involved in a football team, but you sort of, you know, say you win something, but you've hardly got on. And I used to think that must be hard to cope with. You know, mustn't you be looking at your medal or whatever and go, didn't really play a part. But with these now, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like they are actually happy to just be a part, to contribute. Because it is a squad game now.
I was about to say, you've got the Gareth, you know, there was the really good James Pearce thing with Pep Linders last week, where they're talking about the intensity of these 7-8-sided games. You know, part of that is, and you know, they couldn't be any clearer that what you're doing Monday to Friday is impacting on Saturday and Sunday. And that to me is part of when you talk about playing the parks. I sort of agree with you. There's been some times when you've seen certain players who seem to be perennial substitutes, and you are a bit like, I'm not quite sure why you feel as part of this as you do. Whereas I think it is easy to see with this Liverpool side, and maybe it was the case with those sides in the past, and maybe we were all really, really harsh. But with this Liverpool side, you know, the graft, you know, they couldn't be clearer that training is as intense as games for them. So therefore, if you're doing your bit in training and making it intense for instance, Sadio Mane, you might not be getting 30 starts, but you're part of what's making everybody else improve every week.
Yeah, because and there's a collective aim and a collective responsibility, and they're all, you know, they are all on the same page, and that hasn't always been the case. You know, you've felt in the past sort of individual agendas and people who don't get on, and you know, I've asked people who worked at the club in the past, you know, like, what is it really like behind the scenes? And they've gone, well, it's like any workplace where, you know, some people don't get on, you know, so there's little cliques, you know, these are best mates and they're not, he doesn't really talk to him, you know, whatever. But with this group that's currently there, like, it's just like they've all found their way and they're all on it and they all know what they're about. And, you know, Henderson got interviewed at the weekend, and I don't know whether the fella that interviewed him was trying to be a little bit mischievous, but he was asking about his midfield role and saying, you know, well, you were a bit further forward, weren't you, at the end of last season, and you'd gone and knocked on the boss's door. And he was like, well, yeah, but that's what the team needed then. But Fabinho's out, and what they need now is me to do this. And like, you looked at his face when he was saying it, he wasn't messing. Yeah. He wasn't like, you know, no, actually, I'm pissed off that I'm not getting back in that attacking role. He's just focused on what needs to be done right now, and they all are. And when you look at, you know, what we've been doing, the results we've been achieving, and then you see in this week when you turn the internet on, you go on the Echo, whatever, and it's saying Fabinho, Matip, and Lovren are all coming back now as well. And you're like, fucking hell.
Shaqiri just got on at the weekend.
As well.
Oxlade-Chamberlain did 60.
And it's just like, you know, like, we've got all these results, in the face of adversity again. Do you remember when everyone was panicking about Fabinho being injured because he was so good and because he looked so integral? And then they've achieved all these results minus Fabinho, and now he's going to come back and potentially make us better, and we're top anyway, and we're beating everyone anyway, and it's like, fucking hell, literally what a time to be alive. We're so good.
We are so good. Mane, I think at the weekend, I mentioned before, Tottenham do a bit of a job on him in terms of trying to keep him out of the game. There's a decision why he selects what he selects Mourinho, but then the flip side of that is Mane shows how valuable he is working backwards, John. 3 or 4 times he nicks the ball in tight areas, he makes himself available, he turns away from people. He never quite looked like he was going to get on the score sheet, and maybe that was part of Tottenham sort of dealing with him, but he managed to still contribute so much like he always does.
Yeah, it's what Chris Wilder was talking about after Sheffield United, wasn't it? The humility of the team, and I think that's something that they show every time they go on the football pitch, and it was nice to hear it from another manager, you know, he was talking us up, because, you know, you can start to think, oh, you know, we just think everything about this team is amazing and stuff like that. I mean, the league table suggests we're right, but you can, you know, but it's nice when outsiders come and then go, look, this is a really special thing here, and the humility of them, and the fact that if it's not quite going well for them, the easiest thing to do is to get on your own back, or get a bit down, or start not sulking as much, but like, you know, just because sulking suggests sort of petulance, and I'm not really saying that. It's more like being a bit downbeat and going, oh, it's not happening for me today, and starting trying to try too hard in terms of what you're doing on the ball. But he seemed to just have the attitude of, well, yeah, it's tough for me, and maybe they've set up in a way to nullify me a little bit here, so I know how I can help here. I'm just going to do a bit of this for a bit, and just make sure that I'm doing the basics right, basically, and then maybe something will come off for me later. And as I say, it's humility. It's finding a way to support your teammates. It's finding a way to contribute to a victory, and Mane's always done that. And Mane's, you know, have runs where he's done more eye-catching stuff on the ball, but I don't think I've ever come away from a football game and thinking, oh, Mane didn't really do much today. Man, what was Man was like playing with 10. Do you know what I mean? You'd never say that with him, and that's testament to him. You would never say that with him, and I think that's what's, you know, again, to sort of pull us back into a bit more of a historical context with him, Rob, is when the player touted from Southampton, there was questions around consistency, and I think that, you know, the extent to which they now feel and see him absolutely ridiculous. You know, as John says, you always know Sadio Mane's been on the pitch. You can always point to contribution. And I think in many ways, you know, we've seen him score some unbelievably important goals this season. We've seen him score great goals. But in many ways, Saturday is as impressive a performance as any that were bookmarked by things like that. And the reason why is because it isn't quite happening for him. He is being smothered, and yet you come away with being able to remember 4, 5, 6, 7 things that he did, unless you were at a wedding.
Yeah. Well,
just suddenly realised I've gone the wrong person with that.
It's a general one, this one. He'll be all right.
It is general. I had a strong... we're going to talk about his career, aren't we? I was awake for that. I had a strong first 70 at Spurs. Let's not play this down. Like the Reds. Well, it's a cliche, but I've always thought you can tell a great player by watching him on his shit days. It was because the great players just do not disappear. They don't go missing. In fact, what's always annoyed me, there was a patch in Mane's first season and into his second season a bit where a few, who shall remain nameless, actually, no, I can't remember who they were, would go, I think Mane hasn't played well for 4 or 5 games. You go, he's been involved. He's clearly not been at his absolute best. I'll agree with you on that, because he's maybe not scored enough goals, or there's been too many stray passes, or he's skied a few things, but he's always been there at the heart of the action, being involved, being a pain in the arse, being a nuisance. I never like seeing a player damned because things don't come off for them. And Mane is a player who will
certainly an attacking player.
Of course, exactly, Neil, exactly. Especially an attacking player. Touches on, I mean, you know, it's a stat you do occasionally see mentioned, but I don't think it gets enough prominence. But touches on a footballer are a very, very important thing, especially for attacking players. I mean, I remember one a few weeks ago, Aubameyang, I think, was at Anfield, or getting another big game, maybe against City. I think he gets like 10 touches in the entire football match. Now, for all his goals, that's an indictment of an attack of a footballer for me. I don't know, maybe someone can say, well, there was these games Mane did, but I don't think there are. No. I reckon Mane's average touch average touch rate frequency is incredible.
It's one where, with all of them, I think what we're talking about here is showing. And I think that's what this Liverpool side that's doing so well, Gareth, is that they show for each other. They fight for each other. Gomez had another funny game where we keep a clean sheet. I'm able to remember some brilliant things he did. There's also a couple of slightly hairy moments, but then he's terrific on the yellow card. But what he doesn't do when he gets on the yellow card is look to make it easier for himself. If anything, he shows more. If anything, he's even more front foot. Almost as though, well, I'm not letting that happen again. I'm not going to get cut. I have to chase one back and get a second yellow. And it is that idea that they all show, they all fight, they all find their way to contribute through a game, even if it's not what you'd necessarily expect. And Gomez is another example.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's a moment, isn't it, where perhaps in the past that causes some panic, because you're thinking, well, he's on a yellow card and Moura's quick and Moura's they're looking to break on us. We're playing a high line. You could envisage a red card for Joe Gomez, and he never came close to that. He carried on, he kept on going, and we're all spot on in saying that you can have an off day and win, and that's the old cliche, isn't it? And if you do that, then that's what makes champions. And I said near the top of this that I thought it was, in some aspects, a little bit of an off day for Liverpool, and yet they've won, and yet we can draw so many positives from it again. And Mané absolutely everywhere, Robertson just charging round, getting stuck in. One little naughty moment which I referenced earlier, but also I loved the tackle, obviously. The tackle that got references by Mourinho and played over and over on social media in Italian. I don't know. He won the ball. And he showed that he wanted to win the ball, and that's an important thing to do at times. This is like, we're not giving in, we're keeping on going. Gomez was the same, Van Dijk was the same. All of them, you can't question the mentality of any of them. And the Mané thing, I think, is really important, because I thought the same, in that he was everywhere. He was grafting his arse off, and he was still doing the thing where he might be thinking in his mind, okay, they've boxed me off a little bit today. They put me in a bit of a corner. I'm not having the game. But even though he's still willing, he still wants to. He's still facing the defender up and going, okay, I'm going to take you on. I'm going to run at you. I'm going to try and cause you problems. Then he's grafting back the other way over and over again. And we've had loads of players down the years who are attacking talents, but would sit off and watch it going the other way, wouldn't be interested, wouldn't be like, that's not what I'm about. I'm about putting it in the top bin. I'm about creating the headlines. All of these, humility got mentioned before, that's the best word for a lot of them at the moment, because they're not going round giving it the I am a superstar thing. They're going, I am part of a team, I am part of a squad, I am part of a culture that is fully focused on winning this title for Liverpool. And that's why I think I'm finding it very hard now to say, find a ways to say we're not going to do it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm already dreaming about those scenes that we had in town after number 6. And I think, even that as well, that must drive them on. You know what I mean? That was incredible that day. Incredible. It was brilliant. And I was lucky enough to see them at 2 different points on when they come back to town with the big number 6. And you just thought, this is unbelievable. And they thought it was unbelievable. And you've heard them talk about it. You've seen them getting interviewed on the bus, and some of them are speechless. They're just like, fucking hell, knew Liverpool were big, but Jesus Christ. And it's like, well, lads, imagine what it's like when you bring the title back. Do you know what I mean? Just imagine the scenes. And that must drive them on, drives me on. I can't wait to see it. And Liverpool, City are what, 20-1 now to win the league.
I got 22s.
You got of course you did, mate.
He was waking up for that.
Wide awake.
It is getting closer and closer, John. I've had my eye on these 3. I've had my eye on these 3 since June, to be honest with you. Sometimes the fixture list throws up a little bit of a story, throws up something. The first one of them's done. One of the reasons why I've had my eye on them is because, under Klopp, the record in January, even last season when you got 97 points, the record in January still hasn't been, and the performances still haven't been quite what they were, and that's completely understandable. Liverpool put so much into December that there's then this little thing the other side. One of the things, I think they do tie a last 20, each and every one of them, and Gutmann. I think everyone's had a big Christmas and come out the other side. But they do tie a last 20 a little bit. And I think that's one of the reasons why Tottenham are able to sort of reassert themselves. But from here, there is if they can dig deep the next 2, even if you were the most optimistic Manchester City supporter, even if you're Guardiola on the best possible day, you get to the point that if Liverpool tick off Man United at home and Wolves away, having ticked off Tottenham, it really does, as Gareth says, get harder and harder to say, well, you've still got so far to go.
Yeah, I think it does. I think, look, they'll have had their eye on certain fixtures. It's not just us, is it? They'll have been looking at it and going, but they've got to go there, and there's this one and that one might be tricky. And look, you never know what fixtures people are going to drop points in. I mean, Man City themselves have dropped points in some really surprising places and situations, this season. Like, look at Norwich, absolute bottom of the table, aren't they, by a mile, and they beat City, and so you do never know where people are going to drop points. But that said, just how strong this Liverpool side is, and how they control games so well, it does feel like there's only so many teams who can lay a glove on us even now, really, and they're running out. And so I'm sure they'd have had hopes for that Tottenham one. As you say, I'm sure they're looking at Man United next week, because they are one team who the only team who've taken points off us in the Premier League this season. And the more of those you go past, it just sort of demoralises everyone a little bit, really. So they'll be looking for a little chink in the armour or whatever, or a little kind of bit of light that says, oh, maybe, then it'll, only go down to 13 points in the game and or whatever it is. So obviously Liverpool will be in such a strong position anyway, but you just looking for, they'll just be looking for a little bit of hope. I mean, anything more you can do to kind of, dent that hope and grind it into the ground, the better it is for Liverpool. And I think, as you say, I think last year we had a really tough December, didn't we? I think we played 10 games and won all 10 of them last year in December, and we were like, oh, brilliant, but then it did have the knock-on effect. I think we've managed to manage it pretty well this season generally, and I think giving people rests, little rests here and there. Obviously, there's certain games where he's made big changes, not least that FA Cup one, but it pays off for them, and it just keeps that momentum going as well, doesn't it? And I think, there will be games where, I think if they look back on that Tottenham game and watch it back, I think they'll wish they'd done more in the first 70 rather than did anything differently in the last 20. I think there's an acceptance that sometimes if you're playing a good team, they will have a little flurry, especially if you keep them in it. I think Jürgen and Pep and all them, when they're analysing it, will think, we should have been 2-3-0 up after 70, and then after that, they wouldn't have bothered.
It's interesting post-match, Rob. You mentioned this repeatedly. He actually mentions rhythm, that they've lost a little bit of rhythm from the break, that it is this balance and act, isn't it? He wants to keep them fresh physically, not least because we still want to be playing, we want to be playing a big game of football last week of May. That's the journey of this season. We want that as well. So it's difficult. He needs to try and manage them physically in one sense, try not to overload them, but simultaneously it's interesting. He goes out of his way to say after the match, having not played a game since the second, they may have lacked a little bit of rhythm.
Yeah, I think Liverpool's sweet spot is probably a game every 5 days. If you do the detail.
We're going to batter Wolves away then.
Well, you know what? United is an 8-day gap to United. It's not ideal. But I think the rhythm thing's absolutely right. You could see it, someone like Jordan Henderson. I haven't seen Jordan Henderson lose possession quite as often in a long, long time. And he doesn't have a bad game, but he's lacking 0.5% in terms of his anticipation. Yeah. And that, I think, is to do with that. I think it's interesting with the way the title's gone. Guardiola's comments are interesting. Our post, he's conceded it all, but without using the words "I formally concede the title." I think my Danny was in the grounds, and he said the mood on the concourse. You were there, John, weren't you? He said maybe it's just his reading, but he said the mood in the concourse afterwards, like the league is done now. He said, and I think the reason why it's such a big psychological moment is that if you're City, aside from knowing that they can try and say, we'll bank on beating Liverpool, whatever else happens, we've got to play Liverpool at the Etihad, we have to count that as points for us, because if we don't do that, nothing else. I'm thinking, what's Liverpool's next hardest game? What's our next best chance of them dropping? It's Tottenham away. That was our hardest game outside of City left to play, and we won it.
I think if you're City, you're saying it's Wolves, but I take your general point. Maybe the next one down to Tottenham. I mean, Wolves have beaten City twice this season. If I'm playing for Man City, I'm saying let's see how they got on Molineux.
Of course, and they will talk. They might talk their version of me, who's still somehow clinging on to that to hope. Will be saying that. But I still think they'd rather play Spurs at the Lane or the Tottenham Hotspur Arena for 3 games running than Wolves for 3 games running. I mean, yes, Wolves is still a danger game, but I tell you what, we're going to talk ourselves into all of them being danger games. I've looked at Wolves' form; they've only won 2 out of their last 7 in the league. They've beaten City, yes, but they're not all that.
I'm like starting to go the other way with it. In that, I just think I've seen people saying the Guardiola stuff's mind games, and it's like, is it fuck?
No, sometimes managers just say stuff that they mean. Yeah.
I don't think it is. Look at the table. I don't think he's saying to them in the dressing room now, because he'd look a bit daft if he was saying, still win this, still win, and they'd be like, no, we can't. What are you on about, boss? So they're looking at it and saying, like, Liverpool need, there's 17 games left, and we need maximum 12 wins. and that's relying on City to push us all the way.
To win every game.
Yeah. And so I don't think that happens for one. And then we've got eight of the 17 are at home. We're fucking brilliant at home. Who's beating us at home? And all right, we've got Man United and we've got Chelsea, but I'm not bothered. We're well better than both of those sides.
Yeah.
And I just, that's what I'm saying about it. I understand the thing about, don't get ahead of yourselves, don't jinx it, look at all those times in the past and blah, blah, blah. But Jesus Christ, we're in such a position of strength now. And I just think City will crack before we're cracking. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got to be.
It's just ticking them off, isn't it?
Yeah,
do you know what their equivalent?
Just ticking them off now.
Their equivalent of a side who are 4-0 down at half time, or 5-0 down at half time.
6-0.
Let's call it. It's a lot, right? And so all your manager can say to you, although you hear these apocryphal tales of what they did. All Guardiola will say is just win this the next at the end of the season.
Win the second half.
Well,
then win next season. No, I genuinely think if you're Guardiola, when Gareth says what's he saying in his dressing room, I think he's saying, right, okay, we want to win this league next year.
Yeah.
And that's now what we're working on. We're now working on, and we want to win the Champions League, and we want to win this league next year, and we'll retain these domestic trophies, by the way. We're fucking keeping them. So we've got something to parade around the city at the end of the year. And let's win the second half of the season so that we're going into next season going, right, we can go toe-to-toe with them, and it's going to, it's the decider next season. It's going to be the epic decider next season. Best of three. We won the first one. They've won the second one. And we're already now planning for next season. I think that's what Guardiola's saying. Now, what we're saying is, long way to go. Every game counts. One game at a time, which is the right attitude inside that dressing room for us.
Yes, I think Guardiola's going, we can finish this season as many subsequent seasons are often defined by what happens in the last third or half of the former season.
Completely agree, and this is one of them. This is one of them.
This is one of them, and I think Klopp will be aware that. I think, despite the fact that he's incredibly focused and he's keeping the men incredibly focused on one game at a time, there will be a part of him that will be allowing himself to look beyond, and I actually think he'll be looking beyond the imminent clinching of this league. I think he'll be targeting the record, the 101 points minimum, because that will achieve two things. One, it'll get us over the line. It's a bit like practicing for the 1500 metres by doing your fastest time on 1700 metres. It's that syndrome to a degree. But it will also ensure that they keep a winning mentality that will carry them to the very end. It'll keep them sharp if we get to the latter stage of the Champions League, and it'll keep us morally as the best team in the country. I think we need to finish this team, not just win this league, finish this season morally as the best team in the country. There's been a bit of a dialogue. I think that prick Warnock, Neil Warnock, was on TalkSport the other week going, Liverpool may be doing ever so well, but on their day, City are still the best team. And there is, you don't know how many points do we have to finish ahead of them to be the best team. I don't know, but I actually think Klopp might use that, all but metaphorically pin that on the dressing room and use it, because I don't think this is about more than winning this league. I think it's about smashing every record under the sun,
including ESPN's algorithm.
Can we do half an hour on that?
Absolutely not. Thank you very much to Rob Gutmann, to Gareth Roberts, to John Gibbons. It's been the Anfield Wrap in association with The Athletic. If you want to hear Rob do half an hour on that, you can subscribe to Tall Player. It is available, and you can download the app for that sort of thing. You can also obviously sign up to The Athletic, as said before, theathletic.co.uk/the Anfield Wrap to do that on reduced prices and terms and all of that sort of thing. Also, on top of that, mentioned Ireland before, so it'll be Rob, it'll be Gareth, it'll be Paul Cope, Josh Sexton, one other. I'll be there as well. Really looking forward to it. 3 big nights over in Ireland, and we might have more to announce pretty soon as well. We're working very hard here at the Anfield Wrap. We hope you're enjoying it. How can you not be? What a time to be alive, as Gareth said earlier.